Chapter 2. I continued thinking positively, not necessarily positive, until one sunny morning while I was driving to the store with Eric and Jingle Bells, our little black and white mutt. Instead of pulling into the parking lot, I headed east on Foster Road in the direction of the mountain. Soon, I was in unfamiliar territory. Traffic lights became non-existent. Storefronts gave way to houses with unkempt yards. Curbs and sidewalks gave way to dusty shoulders. A weathered street sign caught my attention. Deerdorf Road. Another impulse hit, and I turned right. After several blocks of a tidy subdivision, we suddenly dropped down into a narrow, tree-lined canyon. My eyes had barely adjusted to the dim light when I realized that we were approaching a covered bridge. A horse and buggy bridge, the kind one sees on picturesque calendars, complete with dark forest green firs and yellow-fringed underbrush. I slowed to a crawl, savoring every moment of the crossing, listening to the creaking of the timbers, feeling somehow that this was a good omen. As we drove on, the road twisted and turned uphill, past a very high rockery covered with ferns. Though it went on for several miles, there was never a straight enough section to ease the strain on the engine. Like a snake, I thought. Later I learned that the children of the area did indeed call it Snake Road. Suddenly, we were in the sun again, and a huge barn sat like an open-armed hello just off the shoulder of the road. I said to Eric, if I'd taken the turn a little sharp, we'd have ended up with the cows and horses. I wondered, why would anyone build a big barn so close to the road? It was as if the builder possessed no aesthetic values. It was the one thing that had vexed me about our section of Holgate Street. Every house had about the same standard setback, except for the old house kitty corner from us. Its wooden foundation butted right up against the cement sidewalk. We followed the road into what appeared to be a bowl-shaped valley, with a patchwork of pastures, woodlots, and an occasional grouping of farm buildings. On the west hill, the hill toward town, were large modern houses overlooking the countryside. I turned my eyes east, intent on capturing the view that their huge picture windows looked out upon, and there, beyond the eastern ridge, like an imposing giant, loomed beautiful snow-capped Mount Hood. Just like Norway, I thought. At the first road, I turned east and headed toward the mountain. Occasionally, a for sale sign appeared, but they all were hawking view lots. I had come to the eastern ridge when the road ran into another road. I turned left up the hill, and just as the pitch was becoming steep, I spotted a spread of buildings with a realtor's placard out front. Without hesitation, I turned into the driveway and drove up to a small, one-story, brown-shingled house that seemed to stretch out toward the driveway like a toll booth. Before I could even set the brake, a friendly-looking man in clean jeans appeared. He introduced himself as Mr. Johnson, explained that his wife would be out shortly, and offered to show me around. I agreed, and while Eric and Jingle Bells chased grasshoppers, I followed him around back to inspect the outbuildings, a cement block structure that housed a well and pump, about the size of a two-car garage, a chicken house, twice the size of the pump house, and a large, gray, weathered barn, unadorned and showing its age. While he playfully made a stab at estimating how many cars the barn would hold, I was picturing scaffolds and ladders and toolboxes. Just then, a young woman in a cotton dress came up. "Welcome to Happy Valley," she said. Her words took me by surprise. "Happy Valley?" She smiled. "I am told the original settlers in this area liked happy names. Besides Happy Valley, there is Harmony, Sunnyside, and Pleasant Valley." She led me to the house. Boxes were piled everywhere, making it difficult to get around. After the tour, we paused at the window of the living room, which overlooked a wonderful view of rolling green hills. Unfortunately, the glass had a long imperfection that caused the tops of the trees to appear somewhat removed from their trunks. I wondered at the price of a new plate of glass. The young woman, Jean Johnson, spoke of her regrets at having to move. "We had hoped to live here forever, raise a family, have horses and cows, maybe build a house on the lot below us. We feel so much a part of the community." She pointed to a house about a block away, down the hill and across the road. "You can see the White House just through the orchard there. That's the Thompson place." "Do they do any farming?" "Full-time. They have a herd of Jersey cows, the finest in the county, I'm told. Arlo will talk your leg off about them." With a vague gesture, she seemed to indicate that this was part of a neighborhood joke. Later I understood why. His pet peeve is city folks who come out for the scenery and tear up our road, spreading dust. And that includes all the uppities who built those big houses on the hill and want to change everything. Some even want to tear down the covered bridge on Deerdorf and build a modern one. I knew right then whose side I was on. Do the Thompsons have children? No. She leaned over a packing box and pulled out some tissue to wrap around a vase. But they don't lack for company. Always somebody there. The vet, the milk inspector, the county agent. She placed the vase in the packing box. Up the hill across the road is a family with 2 boys about the age of yours, and a block further are the strawberry fields. Mrs. Carter, the owner, hires all the kids in the valley during picking season. I made a mental note. Good jobs for Freya and Sig. I took one more look out the distorted window. Mrs. Johnson said, "You'll see Arlo Thompson every day. He's always out in his truck or running his manure spreader. He uses our back pasture and connects his electric fence in our pump house and gives us milk as payment. He'd probably make the same arrangement with you." "How old are they?" Mrs. Johnson thought for a moment, then turned to inspect me. "Oh, I'd say Jean is about your age." "My age?" I quickly tucked in my tummy and gathered in my double chin. "Well, how old would you say that I am?" Mrs. Johnson stammered. "Well, you know how it is with people your age. It's hard for us young folks to figure out." I let her off the hook. "Yeah, I know." At the back door, Jean pointed to the apple tree in the backyard. "See that stubby branch? That's the peg where Arlo hangs the milk jug." I left feeling already a part of the community. I reported my find to Corey that evening, except for the size of the house. There's a view of Mount Hood, and they're asking only $10,500. That's a bargain for 6 acres and a view. "There's a catch someplace," he said, showing mild interest. I urged him to go out with me for an inspection, but we were in a spell of good weather, and he was busy with his jobs. In the meantime, I explored more of the countryside east of Portland, which only confirmed the findings of my first trip. Many unimproved lots for sale, but an acreage with a house, big barn, 2 good-sized outbuildings, and a view was like seashells on a mountaintop. Somehow, I always ended up back at the little farm for one more look. In the light of day, it wasn't the consummate place, but in my dreams, the little house got prettier and grew in size. It reminded me of my first boyfriend. I liked him when he wasn't around, but in real life he turned me off. I finally figured that his availability was his only appeal. Not much to base a relationship on, but on the other hand, the real estate man kept ringing me on the phone. "Happy Valley is valuable property. A sleeper. It's going up in price." I continued to relay the information to Corey and raved to my friends and neighbors. A house, a big barn, 2 outbuildings on 6 acres with a view of Mount Hood. Barb Bowen, who lived across the street, was as enthused as I was. It worried me. I recalled how we had bought a lot at Oceanside, Oregon, with the intention of building a cabin, and I had gone home and bragged about it to Barb. Before we had even hacked a path to the building site, she and her husband had bought one there too. That was fine because there were several lots available at Oceanside. But in Happy Valley there was only one 6-acre plot with buildings. I even described it to the Fuller Brush man. He blinked at the price. "Who did you say your realtor is?" I figured I'd better do something more constructive than just selling it to everyone else. That night I prayed about the weather. The next day it was raining. Corey had no more excuses. The minute we topped the hill on Deerdorf Road and began to drop down into the valley, there was a break in the clouds. Corey's spirits rose, and he began reminiscing about Norway. I understood. During the 14 years of our marriage, much of the Norwegian culture had been woven into my life through association with his family. They were close-knit, clannish almost, due in part to his parents still speaking the language at home. We celebrated Norwegian holidays and mingled with their immigrant friends. As we came onto Highland Road, Corey's enthusiasm began to wane. "I'll bet not many cars travel this road in a day," he said. "And judging from the shape of it, it's a good thing. I'll betcha it washes out every spring." When he came back from inspecting the outbuildings, I hoped he'd be humming Home on the Range, but I should have known better. "Ufda!" he exclaimed. These words, uttered with a deep sigh and a heavy sinking of the shoulders, best expressed our English word, ugh. The foundation on the barn is poor. Half of the shingles on the roof are gone. The ramp needs rebuilding. The chicken house needs work. The blockhouse roof leaks. The driveway needs regrading. He took one more look at the barn. "Yeah, from the looks of it, I'd say they have some terrific winds here. This is a funnel right off the Columbia Gorge." It was not until after the fact that I realized he had actually used the word hurricane. I bolstered my positive thinking and unlocked the door with the key left under the mat for us. No sooner had we entered than he began pounding the walls. I knew he was making a mental note of the number of 2x4s, and from the expression on his face, I was afraid there weren't enough. Or worse, they might not even be 2x4s. They might be 1x2s. Without further comment, he proceeded to the bedrooms. The first one received little remark, but at the door of the second, he paused. "This isn't a bedroom. It's a storage closet." "Storage closets don't have windows," I said. "See that little one over there?" I hurried on before he could comment further. "We can put a single bed in here for Freya and a dresser. And see, there's a closet right there." "Yeah, so it is. That's one thing women like today, I'm told. Lots of closets. How many are there in this little house?" I ignored him. "And where is the third bedroom?" Here again I had to be gentle. "Honey, there is no third bedroom," I muttered. He was as close to outraged as I'd ever seen him. "Have you forgotten? You have 2 sons and 1 daughter. Where in this big, wide countryside of yours will they sleep?" This was something I hadn't figured out yet. But I thought it would be terrible if, for years to come, we had to remember our first day in our little country home ending in a fight. So I dug deep for my philosophical tone. "You know, darling, in this life we have many problems. Some we can solve ahead of time. Others we must wait and deal with as they come along." With that, Corey addressed the problem I knew had no solution. "You say there's a good view of the mountain. From which window?" I talked fast. "Honey, I didn't say you could see it from a window. I said you could see it from all 6 acres. And you could if—" Corey went to an east window. "You could if—" He was searching for even more derogatory words. "If some damn fool hadn't built the barn in the way."